The series, of course, is Me, Jesus and the Church. We've talked a little bit about Nick. Nick shared about his background and also shared a bit about his faith, which was really encouraging. Unsurprisingly, it's difficult to put, sometimes our faith, our experiences into words. But one of the things that Nick's happy to look at is the areas where his faith has been a help, been present during some of the challenging times, and also to think about how the church has been helpful. So Nick, kind of over to you. Would you like to share something of, the challenging times that you faced?
Well, people who know me, my sort of friends, church friends and relations, I term the year of 2005 stroke third part 2006 being my I think the Queen Mother or the Queen described it as a Hannah Horribilis year, when I think one year she lost her sister Margaret and mother in the space of a short period of time. Well, people know me, something similar happened to myself, to my Hannah Horribilis year. In the space of 6 months, sadly, I lost my wife Rachel to leukemia, and my father had been battling with bowel cancer over a 5-year period, and my mother passed away with suffering with Alzheimer's. So I'd three. So my wife and parents passed away in the space of 6 months, and that was an extremely challenging and difficult time. And a lot of people, have said, "How on earth did you cope with that?" And I'm not going to be glib and say, "Oh, because God was with me, my faith sustained me," and this and the other. It was very, very difficult. But one thing that I've said to a lot of people is, I think it was the responsibility of fatherhood, actually, of raising 2 young children at that time. That's my youngest, Naomi. She was year 6 at school, so I think Naomi was 9.
Right.
Rachel passed away during the summer holidays, actually, and returning back, I had to see the girls' teachers to explain what had happened, and Hannah was just about to start her GCSEs. I termed the old 4th year. Is that a year in modern terms? Is that year 10? Yeah. Fourth year.
I'm quite lost as well.
Yeah. Anyway, it was the beginning of a GCSE years, and I always said that if the shoe had been on the other foot, if it was me had gone and left the children, and Rachel would have been left, there as a single parent, wherever one goes, wherever heaven is, I would have been there saying to Rachel, come on, Rachel, your children need you. You've got to step up. I knew how much her children meant to Rachel, and in a sense, I could hear her saying to me, "Nick, come on, I know it's hard for you, but our children need you. I'm not sure where I would have been without that responsibility, to be honest. And going back to the church, my church family were amazing in practical, loving support, actually. In one sense, financially, things weren't. I mean, we don't like to talk about life and death insurances, etc. But that was one thing that thankfully had been put in place. But it's all very well having financial stability. You still need human support and love as well. Money only goes so far, really. And it was through the comfort of my church family. Practically, when I started going back to work, Hannah was at 14, so she was catching the bus and coming home okay, but it was getting young Naomi to school, and school finishing at 3:15. There was literally a rota of people from church who would pick Naomi up from school until I got home from work at 5 o'clock, and I would pick Naomi up from various houses. And I think from this day, many of my church family who were involved with that still reflect on Naomi and the sorts of things they used to enjoy helping, and with Naomi doing various craft activities, etc. for her. And so it was the support from church family.
I once again, I knew about Rachel. That news had reached me because people, interestingly, in churches, people had, people sort of do share, and you hear something of people's, backstories, especially, and it comes out, especially people remember fondly, preachers, and but it was one of the things I remember going to one church about how people held you in such esteem, and I mean that in the right way. Really holding the same questions that you hold, thinking I've no idea how Nick got through that, but Nick's done a fantastic job, and he's looked after, the girls, and so that news had reached me. But what hadn't reached me was that you had the 2 other bereavements in that year, and I it's an area where I feel totally ill-equipped to kind of comment, because my dad died, but in very different circumstances, and to hear, so again, probing further, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me with grief. Was there a sense of, I mean, for the sake of other people who might be going through kind of bereavement, would you describe the grief you felt? Everyone's grief, I know, is different. Was it a sense of nothingness? Did you question and think, where is God in this? Or did that seem a question that just didn't apply, wasn't on the forefront of your mind as you dealt with that bereavement?
I wasn't angry for myself. I said to Lola, I wasn't angry for me. I was more angry on behalf of Rachel, because she loved her children so much, and she would not now be there to see them grow up. It's actually funny. I wasn't as much angry for the loss of my, because we were childhood sweethearts. Actually, we met here at school when we was. I wasn't as much angry for it. I was more angry for that Rachel wouldn't be there to see her children grow up and develop and achieve what they have done. The only comfort I give myself is that other people may have the same experiences, that I believe that Rachel sees the children and she's around with them, and she is wherever she is, heaven, whether she's looking down and seeing them journey go on and is enjoying their achievement now.
It's an interesting thing, because I think our theology about death and life after death, the dead are raised. There's this question about, well, when do the dead get raised? But I have a much more realized kind of theology that struggles, and I don't think it's just because in the presence of sort of spirits or the afterlife is much more speeded up in contemporary films, like the film Ghost. I think for me, what lies beyond death and timescales are a mystery. But I think all time is all time is, what's the word I'm looking for? Relative. But when I lead funerals for people, I can't let go of two things. One is the communion of saints. There's actually a line in there about the communion of saints, is that we're not there on our own. We're joined in worship, prayer and service by those who've gone before us. And so then I make that jump. Go on, Nick, sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to say, when you talk about communion of saints, it reminds me of my dear grandmother, Grand Drury. And I say this to so many people, and about my grand, she always told me the story that she had 9 grandchildren, and every night she would sit by her bed and pray for each one of them every single night of her life, And the bit in the Methodist worship book where we talk about praying for those gone before us and the communion of saints, I have my grand. Very mindful of my grand's wonderful faith and her concern and prayer for her grandchildren.
And it's interesting. I end up saying, well, I think it is important. This is just such an important kind of conversation. I end up saying, that what we've got there, it's not the person, it's what used to be their home. They're at peace now. But there's this sense of that person. I love that image of Rachel looking down and delighting in what the children have achieved and what you've achieved. I think that is such a godly, right kind of image, positive image in your mind. I mean, thinking on the reverse side, what harm can that possibly do? But I genuinely think that is a.
I mean, some people will say, well, I don't believe, but if that gives Nick comfort, all well and good. I don't think there's anything wrong in that. I don't think anybody, faith or no faith, would deny me that comfort.
No, at least, and actually, I think we're somewhat. I'm not quite sure. We're somewhat behind in relation to other cultures about our understanding of those gone before us. The ancestors and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we're probing mystery here, but I also note in you that there's a healthy kind of. The scripture is clear in it, that it's not something that we search after, contacting the dead, so to speak, but it's something that at the same time we're aware about the presence of a loved one around us. I mean, I can think of another dear friend who lost his wife as a result of a brain tumor, who speaks to this day of sensing his wife's presence and where, So I actually think it's part of. It's a healing thing, it's a healthy thing, and people express their guilt. People express their grief in different ways, and there's a whole area about how people tend to graves and memorials, and which is really healthy, but we don't talk about it much.
I mean, I don't know how long you want to dwell on this. Before I don't really got any other questions, but we comfort for me was one thing of I had chance to talk with Rachel about the future, and we'd made our wills, etc. And part of Rachel's will was where she wanted to be laid to rest, and she wanted to be cremated. And we had some wonderful times in the Lake District. And she, in her will, she said, "I'd love my ashes to be scattered on the banks of Buttermere Lake in the Lake District," which we did. You know, some friends and some relatives went there, and I get the lakes used to more often, once, twice a year, but you know, the last time was about 2 years ago. But we do have a walk around Buttermere, and we visit Rachel's place, and there is a great, I feel a great sense of a time of us walking with a dog around that part of the Lake District, and you know, and I just feel Rachel's presence there, you know, as you walk by.
And as we kind of move on, it feels natural for me, because I've been present during the well, life is full of chapters in it, but the next chapter, which really, you know, lifted my heart, was of course Zoe. And you know, from that despair and that journey and that grief, to seeing you so fulfilled, and meeting and now married with Zoe. Do you want to say just a word about that? Because you said some golden things earlier that you were prepared to share. Yeah.
Well, if you said to me that I'd be looking at finding companionship on internet dating a few years back, that would be. Now this isn't swipe left Tinder type internet dating.
I'm not that familiar with swipe left Tinder internet dating. It's not my area. But go on, Nick. Go on. I'm with you.
This is a bit more, say, bona fide, inclusive. People may have heard of Christian Connection. Christian Connection. Not wanting to give Christian Connection too much of a plug, but yeah, I'd been. And long story short, oh no, we're getting the time right now. So we was married in last May '89, and we'd met up. It's right now.
If she were in the room, she'd be telling you now, wouldn't she?
She would actually, yes. But it was. She responded to a profile, if you like. That's right. The end of 19. So we married in. No, where were we? Sorry, 2009, 2000 and end of beginning of 2018, wasn't it?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the beginning of 2018. Yeah.
Yeah.
We met up and had a walk with the dog. Luna, my border terrier, amazing icebreakers, Luna, and met up and went back to Zoe's for a chat and a cup of coffee. And couldn't believe after about 5-6 hours of chatting, it was look at what guy. It was sort of 7 or 8 o'clock, and quite funny. I sort of term it my calling card. I left my walking boots at Zoe's, and I had to return to pick my walking boots up, and well, sort of the rest is history, really.
You can't. It doesn't sound like a seasoned pro approach.
No.
I can't imagine that you've went on many other kind of Christian Connection dates and I left my walking boots. It sounds like a moment of the spirit, but that's another thing. But it's just so it is good to see, and I think it's significant because the one thing that, even though I listen to your story and I hear about others and think, how on earth would I kind of managing that sort of scenario. The one thing that comes across is that sometimes people, I think it's more they can't possibly envisage a future with somebody else, or a future even, or how things will pan out. And I'm not saying that, you know, everyone needs to find someone else, so to speak, but I think there is something, there's a common thread in that people do say, I never expected, like you said, I never expected to feel ready to be in search of another relationship, or never really was expecting love to come round the corner again, and it did. I'm not saying it's the case for everyone, but what interests me is the amazement in people that before I had no capacity, no, you know, and then life kind of changes, and yeah. So I'm profoundly moved. So let's just, it'd be helpful just to close.
What I would say that with Zoe, bless her, she has honestly been very respectful of Rachel and of her children. And the first time she visited the lakes with me, we'd walk around Buttermere, and she said she spent a little bit of time again. You say, and describe it as speaking to Rachel and saying how blessed she was that she'd come to know me, and she would do a very. She would never hope to replace the children's mother, but she would do a very best to do right by her.
It's just amazing. I mean, that is, you know, yeah, it's blown me away tonight. You know, this connection, because this connection that we have with others and being faithful to their memories, and life is, and understand the complexity, the dynamics of, you know, quite complex, you know, but there's lots of other families out there who have that complex mix of step mums and, you know, and dads, but it's touching to hear that and to see you both involved at Whittlesea as well. So just moving on, you talked a little bit about the importance of, obviously we've heard the church has been in that process, has been in practical support, really helpful. You talked a little bit about small groups and how that small group was helpful in your early faith. What's on your heart at the moment when you sort of think about church? I mean, it's obviously, what's on your heart at the moment?
Well, first of all, both Zoe and I, it may sound glib to say, but we honestly believe that God has brought us together for a purpose. Zoe's looking to retiring in 18 months' time. Whether she retires or returns, we don't know. But right from the outset, we firmly believe that God has brought us together for a purpose, and we're still looking to what that purpose is. I mean, as far as the church, you know, in this season, unfortunately, not now being able to meet face to face, Zoe recognised the importance of encouragement and keeping people together, although we couldn't keep together face to face. And as soon as she, because obviously, I don't know if people were, but she works for the National Health Service, and she was aware of the need to keep people together. And as the first lockdown approached us in March of last year, she was soon drawing together a WhatsApp group for the church and enabling that to happen. She was aware that she probably wouldn't be able to see her dad as often as she could. Her dad is 84 and was very determined to get him familiar with social media, so that he's now on WhatsApp, and Zoe regularly connects with her dad on WhatsApp. a daughter, Lorena, who has health needs. She lives with a care package in Dogsthorpe. At times when Zoe can't see her, she tries to engage with Lorena by doing things through WhatsApp. She does craft activities with her via WhatsApp. And, you know, Zoe has been very helpful in setting, or not necessarily, well, inspiring people to embrace that there are things that we can connect each other, you know, even though we're not face to face, but that we will get through this by the means.
Mm.
And, you know, church fellowship, we're not so, at Wittersea, we've set up a Bible study fellowship once a fortnight. Now, it's not that to everybody's cup of tea, and as I said, that we find it difficult to engage in this way, but I think we have to embrace what we have now.
Mm.
You know, I don't know how long we're going to be devoid of meeting face to face with the church, but we can inspire, share our faith, and hear people's stories in other ways. So I think it's important, and I think it's important we should. We've also embraced not sort of, but we produce a lockdown.
Oh yes,
magazine,
the lockdown magazine. Yes,
magazine which Tony White from Queen Street took on board as a suggestion, and straight away said yes. We'll try and pull this together, and I think we're on our 7th or 8th edition, and people in the church have valued hearing people's stories through that means. Those who can't really engage on a laptop or through Zoom or video, they're still able to hear from people through a magazine, which is good.
Well, I mean, Nick, it's been such a privilege to be able to hear, and thank you for being so open, so vulnerable. And I think the whole point of these interviews, folks can probably tell, although they're in two hearts, they're uncut, and I think they're very real. For that reason, you know, and you know that your sincerity just comes across so much. So thanks for. I mean, I guess if there was one final question, it would be, if someone was out there and thinking about faith or whether to come to church, what would you say to them?
If I can only speak from my own personal experience. The thing that's given me comfort, and people might say it's resilience. I mean, Zoe and I very often talk to each other about our own sort of personal faith and what sustains us. And we've been quite honestly open with each other. I mean, when we were married, we used the theme of the 3 strong chord.
Yes, yeah.
And there's 3 strands here. There's myself, Zoe, and the love of our Father. And it's that 3rd chord in that holds us together. And I would dearly love to give everyone the message that if all else fails, God will never fail you, which I know to be true. And Zoe and I have shared many times that if anything happened to either one of us, it would be devastating, but we know that we would be each sustained beyond our marriage. We both honestly believe I can't provide Zoe with everything, and Zoe could not provide me with everything. There's only one sure person who can, and that's the love of our Heavenly Father, that will sustain us through all circumstances. And we pray the prayer, the peace that passes all understanding. And it is, that passes beyond all understanding.
Yeah.
People, might say to me, well, I don't understand what supported you through all that grief. It is, in human terms, you can't fathom it. It is a peace that goes beyond any human thought or understanding. So basically, the message I would say is just taste and see.
Nick, thank you. Thank you so much. And in a way, I don't really want to add much more to that, because I think it's just the most wonderful, helpful ending. And rest assured, I'm sure people who are watching this will be praying for you, praying for Zoe. And I'm sure that what you've said will encourage other people.